Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Some people say that people with relationships live longer, but I will say that perhaps those people just have better genes. They have higher IQs or more charm or better looks, and because they have better genes in general, they more often have better health as well. So the people that happen to be smarter, richer, more charming also happen to have better health on average, I'll bet. And so these are the people who are more likely to be able to get a girlfriend or wife because they have more money. And they have more money because they have higher IQs. And they have higher IQs because they have better genes. So the people who are more likely to be able to get a girlfriend or a wife are more likely to live longer because they have better genes. Not because having a girlfriend or a wife makes you live longer, right? Especially, these days when it's much, much harder to get a wife or a girlfriend because of the extreme gynocentrism caused by the shortage of female sex, which is created by the promiscuity of a significant percentage of men. That is not anywhere near the majority, but, a significant percentage. Because if it's just 0.01% of men being highly promiscuous, that's just cutting into that extra 1% of women in society. Because, there's an extra 1 or 2% of women in society, because, 51% of the people which are born are female, and 49% or something like that are male. So, right, so you're only cutting into that extra 1% if it's just, 0.01% of men who are being promiscuous. But if you got, 10 or 20% of men being promiscuous, that does cause a massive shortage of available female sex. So it's very different whether you're talking about promiscuity by just a king or 10 or 20 aristocrats, or whether you're talking about promiscuity by 10 or 20% of men. Totally different issue. So maybe the people who are in relationships live longer. Maybe the reason people are in relationships live longer is not because relationships make them live longer. Maybe it's actually the people who are likely to live longer anyway are the very same ones who are more intelligent and more charming, and thus able to make more money, and thus are more likely to be in a relationship. I don't think relationships make people live longer. I think relationships are more likely to be engaged in by people who would live longer anyway, whether they were married or whether they were hardcore bachelors, hardcore MGTOW monks. Although there's also the possibility that the reason the people who are in relationships live longer is because they have to be more responsible. If a person has to take care of a wife and kids, then he cannot afford to abuse alcohol or do other self-destructive things. He has to take good care of his health so that he can keep providing for his wife and kids, because they're depending on him, so he has to take really good care of his health. So he's more likely to live longer. Right? So that also might be another reason that people in relationships live longer. Not because relationships make you live longer, or that a wife is a massive asset to your life, she keeps you so much more relaxed and this is why you live longer, or something like that. It's just because you have responsibilities, and so you're holy shit, I gotta do everything I can to keep my health as good as possible for as long as possible for my kids and wife's sake, right? Or it could be that people who are in a relationship are happier, and that happiness means less stress hormones, whereas most people who are not in relationships experience more stress hormones because they want to be in a relationship but can't find a woman, because either the guy is an incel or he just can't find a woman who's both physically attractive and has a good moral character and who is interested in dating him. Maybe he can find physically attractive women, but they're all of bad moral character, and maybe he can get them to date him, but he doesn't want to date them. Or he can find girls with good moral character, but they're not attractive. So, they want to date him, but he doesn't want to date them, right? Or he can find a woman who's physically attractive and has a good moral character, but she's taken. Or he can find a woman who's physically attractive and has good moral character, but they just don't have a personality that meshes. So neither of them is interested in dating each other, right? The only women he can date seem to, either be attractive and have bad moral character, or moral character but not attractive, or they just don't, or he just doesn't mesh with them. So then experiencing more stress hormones because of not being able to find a good woman, even though he's technically not an incel, means that he'll live a shorter time. So maybe it's also a matter of virtue. Maybe people who are in relationships are more virtuous, and that's why they're able to make their relationships last long term, and that higher level of virtuous means virtue. And that higher level of virtue possessed by those people means that those virtuous people are more calm. And being more calm is good for their health, and means that they will be healthier and long-lived. There was a very famous Tai Chi master, I can't remember who it was, maybe Wu Tu Nan, him or some other guy, said that the real key to his longevity, I think he lived to be 100 or something like that, 100 or 101, another Tai Chi master who lived to be 100, he said that his longevity was not actually due to Tai Chi Chuan, but due to relaxation. He said that Tai Chi is conducive to relaxation, and it's the relaxation, it's the calm state of mind that he has that Tai Chi helps him cultivate. That calm state of mind, that relaxation, that's why he's lived so long, he said, right? So it could be that, people who are in relationships and are able to have a long relationship because they're not just bouncing from relationship to relationship. They date this person for a month, and then for 3 months they don't date anyone. Then they date this person for 6 months, and then they don't date anybody for 3 months. And then they date this person for 4 months, and then they don't date anybody for a couple of months. Like, the people who can't stay in a relationship are the ones who don't have a very good moral character, and that's why they can't make their relationships work. So people who are more virtuous and therefore more likely to be calm are also people who have relationships last longer. So it's just a selection bias. It's not the relationship making him live longer. It's the fact that people who are going to live longer anyway, because of being good people and therefore being relaxed, those are also the people who can actually make relationships work. So thus, more likely the people who are in relationships live longer, you see. And maybe it's further an issue of societal respect. Like, maybe a guy like an incel, for example, lives not only a shorter life because of the stress of not being able to meet his basic human needs in terms of sex, but he's also even further stressed because of not being able to get companionship, right? And maybe compounded onto that. Now, obviously, companionship can be very relaxing and good and an advantage sometimes, but, along with that, you also get a lot more stress because she can be a massive pain in the ass as well, right? So maybe that's not such a good argument, but I guess it's also a possibility. And maybe compounded onto that is the general societal derision that is directed at such a guy, an incel, because of his low status, making him even more stressed out. Lack of respect, lack of love, and lack of sex. Maybe all three of those things each individually add more stress, and in aggregate, they actually shorten the man's life, because maybe each of those things individually are not enough to be statistically significant, but all three of them together do become significantly statistically significant, to the point that studies can prove that single people live shorter lives than people in relationships. I really can't prove any of this, of course, and I'm already aware of what someone, I think it was Colttaine, showed about how people don't live longer if they're married, because formerly married men are counted among single men when determining how long single men live, thus dragging down the lifespan numbers of single men, because it's unfair that divorced men should be counted among single men, because the reason divorced men drag down the numbers, because the reason they're miserable and the reason they commit suicide and therefore drag down the numbers is because they were married and got divorce raped. Right? So I know about that argument already. So I'm not saying that that's a wrong argument, and I'm not unaware of that argument. I'm just saying that some of this could also be true, right? This could be yet more reasons why relationships are not actually the cause of people in relationships living longer. It could actually be other reasons, like they say, correlation is not causation, right? So I just thought this was something that you all might find interesting. This has been Redshift. Peace.